All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Howard, and I'm a live streamer for AP Lang, as you probably know, because you're in the AP Lang live stream. But today we're going to be talking, we're not really going to be going over a lesson plan. This is more of, I'm sharing student examples with you, and then we're going to kind of gauge what score they got and see what we can learn from that. And then I'll share some examples of essays I wrote last year as an AP Lang student. So that's the game plan for today. And if anybody who's in here wants to comment their name and either the school they go to or their state they're in, or something just so we can get to know each other. So I'm going to be using your guys' help a little bit today, if you're okay with that. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Just give me 1 second. Okay, sure. I think that should work. Okay, there we go. Okay. So, we're just, did not need to make it full screen. We're just going to be going over student essays. And just once again, if you haven't followed Fiveable on their social media platforms, here they are. They're on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, obviously, because live streams. So go ahead and follow them on those platforms. It's really good just to be able to know what's happening, and especially if you're managing multiple AP classes, just to, it's hard to know when streams are happening and stuff like that. And then next week, which I think actually tomorrow, Kevin's going to be going over sophistication in AP Lang. So that'll be really good if you want to tune into that. So now we're going to go ahead and get into today's lesson. So first thing I wanted to do was go over a synthesis prompt and just analyze. So I'm going to show you the prompt. I'm going to show you the scoring guide, and then I'm going to show you student responses, and then I'm going to have you guys comment and guess what you think they got, and then I'll show you. And this is really important because it shows you what AP graders are looking for, and like what are some things that you're strong in, what are some things you're not. But and I can't really tell if anybody's in here, so if they want to go ahead and say something, but if not, that's fine too. Anyway, I could just be talking to myself. So for this one, the prompt is based on the accompanying 6 sources, which is what a synthesis essay is. So let's see. Read the following sources carefully. Then in an essay that synthesizes at least 3 of the sources for support, take a position that defends, challenges, or qualifies the claim that television has a positive impact on presidential elections. So I'm not going to go ahead and show you all the sources because that would take way too long. But just keep that prompt in mind when we're analyzing the synthesis student essays. And we'll just start with 1. And I know they have new grading rubrics this year, so if like last year was 1 through 9, but if you guys just want to guess, like this one passed, this didn't pass, this was a high scoring, low scoring, medium scoring, that'll be good too. So let's go look at the student examples. Okay. So this one first says, it's kind of fun to read these because of the handwriting, but so this is double I. So go ahead and write double I in your papers or just keep a note in your head, and we're going to guess what score this one got. Okay. Our country, the United States of America, employs a peculiar, I think, sort of governing system, democracy. Simply by definition, democracy is good as a system of, I'm having a hard time with their handwriting, blank, for the people, by the people, implies that the greatest number of people possibly should be involved. Although the media's mission of supporting pertinent information to the masses follows democratic ideas and definition, the media's input upon America's society, especially in the area of presidential elections, has done little to increase participation in the political process, and by doing so has created a new sort of identity for the president himself. To begin, the basic assumption of noting the media to relay news to the people is not a bad one. Tension has brought widespread penetration, geographical distribution, and a feeling of direct contact to those people of America, source A. So this is a good example of how to quote your sources. You can do quotation marks or paraphrasing, but you want to make sure you put what source you get it in from, because they tally up like how many sources you use and stuff to help with the score. Spanning the distance between two oceans, our country is too large for direct personal contact between legislators and citizens. And tension has allowed thousands of people television has allowed thousands of people the opportunity to be informed with national events. Between 1960 and 1980, the number of homes watching presidential debates skyrocketed from 28.1 million in 1960 to 48.5 million in 1900, source D. Basically, television has brought our nation together in that more people than ever before can be a part of the political process if they so desire. Until this early promise, source A, of television does easily align itself with the democratic ideals, another important idea, that of the people's free choice whether or not to participate, has shown television less promising aspects. Television initially spurred many Americans to pay attention. Annoyed with anyone with a TV in a way by on the I can't even read it. By on the floor in the U.S. Capitol from his or her seat in the comfort of the living room back at home in Tennessee. Unfortunately, the media's portrayed of political quickly became less appealing, as even those aiming easy to understand content these days are failing, more often than not, to get good ratings. Source F. Networks who try to journalistic shoot over the ideas of many viewers. Those who search for a less common denominator, source F, became boring to others, and those who try to get a middle ground remain simply mediocre Americans, quite diverse in appearance in a presidential debate or writings. So I'm just going to skip down to the conclusion because I think we get the basics of this one. It's pretty long. So I'll read the conclusion to you guys. It says, and in all, as a nation itself is as an example of democracy for the rest of the world, the United States must follow the definition of democracy, that is allowing the greatest possible involvement in order to improve as a nation. Though the media has brought the opportunity of involvement to meeting American households, it has sent many more away and has actually created a blank of public opportunity for the political process. At the same time, citizens stray away. Presidents have become more concerned with the now united opinions surrounding their office, now unlimited. This blank relationship can learn is far from fulfilling our own forefathers' hopes, and even firmer from granting the media in the title of a positive influence upon society. Wow, that was kind of difficult to read just because of the handwriting, but it goes to show you when you're writing your essays during the AP, like you're not great on your handwriting, but you want to make sure the graders can read it. But anyway, so what I did in my AP class last year that helped a lot, it was she'd give us an essay like this, a student example, and she would have us guess like what score they got. Were they high scoring, medium scoring, low scoring? Did they even pass it all? Stuff like that. And that really helped you to see like what you should aim for a passing essay. So I'm not really sure if anybody is on here, but if you are, go ahead and comment what you think it got. You can comment a number 1 through 9 because that was the rubric last year, which is what this is based off of, or you can just say high, middle, low. So wait just a minute, 7 or 9. Okay. I'll wait just one more second, and I'll start navigating over to scoring commentary. Okay, so that was I think, yeah. So yeah, that was an 8. So yeah, you were right. You're right in the middle of that. So the reason for this is this essay effectively takes a position on the impact of television on the presidential election and effectively synthesizes at least 3 sources, and we saw them clearly do that in their prompt or in their essay. And on the top of the second page, for instance, the writer notes how the number of homes watching presidential debates skyrocketed from 28.1 million to 45.8 million. So I'm not reading this whole thing, but it just shows you like that's a really high scoring essay. A few aspects of it that I'd like to point out is it was long. And I hate to say this, but because I don't want to make you think like short essays can't be good, but typically the longer essays are the ones that are more descriptive and get higher scores. So that's just something to think about. That's not saying like short essays are bad or anything, and they can't get high scores, but most high scoring ones I see are longer. Okay, so let's go to another one. That was I. Let's just go maybe to X. Okay, this is a pretty short one. Okay. Though some might argue that television has made a wider audience interested in the American presidential elections, the addition of television to politics has ultimately been detrimental. So we can see right here she's clearly taking a position that is detrimental. Early presidential candidates had to rely on their opinions as well as propaganda to get themselves elected. Voters were, for the most part, focused on the issues at hand. With the birth of televised debates, images soon became part of the equation. Not only did they think about what they were going to say, but also their body language, dress, and making the speeches even more calculated than before. The pre-planned aspect of today's debates often leads to tipping around the question to get in all of their talking points, subtracting from the genuity of the speakers. Also, as Americans are bombarded with daily images of politicians, they begin to see them as, I can't read that word, blank, not as the people who could someday control their country. There's an example of this in the infamous Boxers Are Brief question to Bill Clinton, which clearly shows a departure from the issues that actually matter, such as taxes and foreign affairs. One thing I just want to point out in here is this one might be lower scoring because they're not citing where they got their sources from. There's clearly like quotes and stuff, but they're not saying source A and stuff. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking of the scoring. Let's see. I'll just skip to down here. By the 1990s, the sensational nature of televised debates had worn off, as seen by the dramatic increase in viewers of debates in 1996. This evidence suggests that while television may have initially made people more interested in politics, the effect is wearing off. Another negative repercussion of television in politics is the amount of power it gives the media. Thanks to editors, only a few minutes might be shown of a debate lasting over an hour, so the network can make one candidate look like a hero and the other a fool, if they so choose. When one considers this, it is evident that TV has done nothing to bring straightforwardness and honesty back into politics. There have even been times where the media's portrayal of certain events had influenced the presidential administration, as in the case of Walter Cronkite dealing the Vietnam War. Hopeless. It is a frightening prospect to think about how much poll news anchors have for the ultimate fate of our country. How much poll news anchors have for the ultimate fate of our country. Television will continue to be a part of the presidential election in America, no matter what we think about its role. We can only hope that there will be a return to the issues and that the beauty something aspects of presidential debates will somehow be minimized. Okay, so yeah, just things to point out in this one, they didn't really cite their sources, so that might make it a little lower scoring, but they did take a definitive position, which is automatically gives them a point. So if you guys want to write down or comment or however you want to what you think this one got. I'll wait just a second before I switch back to this one. Okay. So now we're looking for X. Okay, X got a 2. 6 or a 9. So you're right on the first essay. This is actually a 2, which is pretty low compared to what you guessed, which I think might just be because of the sources, because it seemed to be a pretty well written essay. So I get why you. Can you hear me? I'm like frozen right now. Okay, I don't know if you heard that, but that was like a pretty good guess based on how well written the essay was. But I think it's mainly because of lack of sources and stuff. So let's look right here. See, it says right here, this essay is in many ways insightful and well written enough to earn a score in the upper half of the range. So just like you put, like they're saying this is well written enough to earn a 6 or a 9, but it does not synthesize any sources. Synthesis, as defined in the prompt, requires the documentation of sources cited. Instead, this paper is characterized by a description of the score of 2 from the scoring guide. So exactly like you guessed, if they had simply put like source A, source F, cited their sources, they would have gotten a 6 or a 9. But since they didn't do that, 6 to 9, but since they didn't do that, they got a 2. And that's a really good lesson to learn, because this student obviously took an year of AP Lang, and I'm not like criticizing him or her or anything, but it obviously just didn't cement into their brain that they needed to synthesize sources. So that's something that we can learn now, so we don't have to make that mistake on the test, which would not be quite as fun. So let's go let's go on to rhetorical, actually. Okay. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. So does this have the answers at the end? Yes. Okay. So this prompt was, I don't know if this is, okay, this is the Claire Booth loose prompt. Okay, so it's like a dot. Oh yeah, sorry, I just barely saw your question. So synthesis is actually very similar to a document-based question, which is really good if you're taking American history or world history at the same time as this. Yeah, so it's pretty much the same format as that. That's a good question though. Okay. So this next essay, I don't have the prompt for, but it's about a journal. I went over the prompt yesterday, and I don't know how many of you watched the stream yesterday, but it's pretty much about a journalist giving criticism to her peers at a conference. And so this is rhetorical, so I don't really need to know that much about the prompt, but we'll go ahead and read some of the essays and then just guess what they got. So let's start with, oh, it's frozen. We love that. Sorry guys, my computer's frozen. Give me a hot sec. Okay, there we go. Okay. The speech given by Claire Booth Luce to the Women's National Press Club was controversial and too even condemning of her audience. However, Luce pulls it off by gently preparing the audience for the catacomb. She employs the fact that they invited her there to speak a strong consideration for their feelings, possesses of their profession, and a clear plea for mundendus. If anybody knows what that word is, mundendus. Okay. She opens the speech with a paradox about being happy and challenged. Okay, so there's their first rhetorical strategy. First saying that she is flattered and honored, then flips her original statement saying that she is less happy than you may think. Right off, and here's, they put lines 3 to 4, but just so you guys know, you don't have to do that. It's not like a synthesis essay where they dock you for not doing that. But, I mean, it doesn't hurt to put it in there. Right off the bat, Luce gives her audience signs that her speech is not going to be 100% positive. But then she makes sure to remind them that they've asked for her opinion on what is wrong with the American press. For her first paragraph, Luce makes her intentions clear before even starting her argument, and she confirms that they're aware that they asked for their criticism. So just a quick comment on this. I'm not sure, I haven't looked at the score yet, but if I had to guess, I would say this one's lower scoring, because although it does mention a rhetorical analysis tool, it mainly summarizes, and you kind of want to avoid just merely summarizing in your rhetorical analysis prompts, but let's keep going. In the second paragraph, Luce uses self-appreciation to show her audience the difficult situation that she is in. She acknowledges her own position, which exposes their follies and sins of her listeners. Luce gives them a slight idea of the criticism that is to come by comparing herself to an arbitrary banquet speaker who shares the same difficult task. Next, Luce employs some humor by saying that she is not the best candidate for the delicate art of giving an audience hell, but rather that perhaps public figures Billy Graham and Bishop would succeed at it. Her lighthearted and self-deprecating approach makes the audience more likely to accept her claims, at least hear her out. So this would be kind of example of tone-ish, which is another rhetorical strategy. So they named one, in case you didn't pick that up. As Luce continues her speech, she again reminds them of her invitation and then prepares them for harsh words complimenting their careers and their standards of writing. She warns them that is not to be sugarcoated because they are an audience of journalists and they would be able to see through any attempt to do so. Her praise of their intelligence automatically pleases the audience and makes them more willing to listen to the argument. So just pointing out a good thing that they do in this essay is quoting and giving examples. That's always helpful. Instead of just saying like, she used a paradox, this is how it helped. She used this paradox here, and this is how it ties it. So they're doing a good job of that part. Through the final section of her introduction, Luce carefully plants the definition of journalism, the pursuit of what, and the effort to the state of truth. What this statement pertains to her overall argument that journalists do not always state the truth. She does not outright accuse them of this. Instead, she merely introduces a commonly hated opinion on journalism. I think that's hated. By waiting to argue it further, Luce gets her audience on board that truthfulness and honesty are their primary concerns. If the audience agrees with this statement, then she will have already won half the battle to showing them journalists their fault. Not them, to showing them journalism's faults. Okay, sorry, that sounded like bad grammar for a second, but that was just bad reading. Luce is creative, careful, and aware when presenting her opening statements. She prepares the audience by appealing to their feelings, by being considerate, and through a plea for open-mindedness. So if you guys want to write down or mentally note what you think this, or comment what you think this essay got, I'll go ahead and flip over there. I'll give it just a minute so you can think. Remember again that she did do all three rhetorical strategies, or I'm assuming it's a she did name three rhetorical strategies, but also did a lot of summarizing. But we'll just see. Okay, so this was 2A. We'll go see what they got down here. Okay, 2A, they got an 8. So yeah, they did pretty good even with the summarizing in there. This essay effectively analyzes how Luce uses the introduction of her speech to prepare her audience for the message. I'm frozen again. I don't know if you can hear me when I frozen, so I just kind of stopped for a second. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Now I lost where I was. Oh yes. Okay. So we saw that in their essay, they clearly stated like this is how she prepares them. She is like self-deprecating, so she hopes they'll be nicer to her or whatever. So that's good. Okay. We'll do one more rhetorical, then we'll go on to argument, and then I'll show you some of the essays I wrote last year as an AP Lang student myself. So let's do one with good handwriting, please. Not to like criticize anybody's handwriting. My handwriting really sucks. Like I couldn't even read handwriting. Let's do this one. Okay. Claire Booth Luce seems to. This is the beginning, right? Yeah. Okay. Claire Booth Luce seems to be a passionate journalist who wants the world to hear the truth and for the press to tell it. Luce was uses persuasive rhetoric to influence her listeners to be honest with the American people. Luce starts her speech by telling the audience she is honored to be there, as many do before speech, in order to tell the audience she wants to talk to them and she's ready to give her points. Luce says, "I am happy than you might think and more challenged than you could know." Saying this lets us know that she's about to point out a weakness or flaw that is bothering her. She says that she has walked over to the press, referencing in the late BCs and early ADs how adulterers and sinners would be ashamed and beat with rocks for thrown at them. This makes a metaphor for how she's about to reveal and shame the press's weaknesses. So there's nothing particularly wrong with this paragraph, but just a little piece of advice. I would put this up there because we didn't get to the point that she was referencing a metaphor to the very end of the paragraph, when typically you want your rhetorical analysis like lined out at the beginning. But let's just keep going. Luce says that there's no audience who should be more revelated at the speaker buttering them up, because as journalists, they should want the truth instead of a kind praise. She says that the president's job is to correctly inform people, whether it be about a summit conference or why the moon looks larger coming over the horizon than it does when it is fully risen. Doing this shows her audience that they are truth seekers and that they should want to tell themselves informed citizens of truth and the important events happening. So I don't really see a rhetorical strategy in here, but I could be missing it. But I mostly just see, but the thing is, they don't always need to have a name if they describe what they do, and it depends on what the AP graders pick up in this. But that's just a point to look at, is they don't necessarily name a strategy. Okay. Throughout all the negatives she says about the press, she stops completely draining their spirits and says that with as much as wrong with the American press, there's also much right with it. She says that it is understandable that they may not want to listen to her, but encourage them to stick around and listen. Luce asks them to accept good and bad, giving the journalists a balance, even though it may not make a good copy of the newspaper, and they should be honest with people. Luce uses a well-spoken retort to influence all listening to be more honest writer. With her clever uses, she conveys that they should do their job the way it was meant to be done. Okay, so I'll give you a second to go ahead and either comment if anybody's still in here, or write down what score you think it got. 1 through 9, or just low, high, medium score. And then I'll go look at it. It's going to be 2C. So let's go. Okay, 2C got a 4. So for those of you not familiar with last year's rubrics, this is not quite passing. Let's see why. This essay inadequately analyzes how Luce uses the introduction of her speech to prepare the audience for her message. Starting with a vague, terse opening paragraph, Luce seems to be a passionate journalist who uses persuasive rhetoric. And that's what I was saying, like, all those things are true, but it's merely a summary. It's not really analyzing. In the second paragraph, the first example of Luce's words, "I am less happy than you might think," is misrepresented as Luce's intention to point out weakness or flaw that is bothering her. Overall, I'll just skip to the end, but overall, the essay inadequately represents Luce's strategies, whether by misrepresenting them or failing to sufficiently analyze them. The prose most conveys the student idea, but does not consistently control the elements of writing. So that would just be an example of just kind of things to avoid. Sorry, I'm going to drink a water really fast. Things to avoid in rhetorical analysis is just summarizing and yeah, so anyway. And honestly, if you guys want to do this on your own, like, this is a good practice, especially when it comes closer to test time. It's just printing out student examples and guessing what scores they got and then comparing, because these are all available online. But let's go to argument. Student. Okay. Okay. Oh, I can't see it. So dumb. What the? Okay, the essay score. All essays score. Okay. Okay. Essays earning a score of 8 effectively argue a position on the extent of which Wilde's claims are valid. The evidence and explanations are appropriate and convincing of the argument. So I'm not sure what Wilde's claims are, but I'm sure we can figure it out as we begin to read. That's not. I'm not going to try to read that one. Let's go with this one. Okay. According to, oh yeah, I know what this one is. So this one is saying, like, nothing, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's Oscar Wilde's quote about, like, nothing would be done in history without disobedience, so disobedience is a good thing. Okay, so according to Oscar Wilde, disobedience is man's greatest virtue. Through disobedience, he claims a progress was born. Looking back on history, there is clearly truth to Wilde's assertion. In society, disobedience promotes the questioning of societal norms, historical change, and progressive thought. So here they're clearly taking a side, which is good. Wilde was not the only person who saw the intrinsic value of disobedience. Henry David Thoreau, a prominent transcendent writer, crafted an entire essay in lifetime on the principles of civil disobedience. So he's bringing in a historical example of a prominent figure, so that's something good. Thoreau quickly developed his ideas regarding society and his disdain for conformity. These thoughts soon led to the actions as he spent time in prison for not paying his taxes. This form of civil disobedience was his way of challenging societal norms and prompting others to do the same. I can't even say that word right now. Transcendentalist thought became wildly popular, and as I have read both Thoreau's and Emerson's works in school, it has left a lasting imprint on modern philosophy. So this is a little bit off topic. It is left a, but okay, we'll just keep going. Just keep that in mind. Hints of Thoreau's civil disobedience can be seen throughout the 20th century. His ideas lead to the most pivotal historical changes. However, in the civil rights movement, leading figures such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks urged African Americans to spark social and political change through acts of civil disobedience. They staged sit-in marches and peaceful protests, all in the hopes of obtaining the civil rights they deserved. Their success is evident in the many social and legislative change that followed the civil rights movement. One of the most notable being the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I learned all about this and more during my 5th grade field trip to the Civil Rights Museum, where I purchased a T-shirt with a quote, "Well-behaved women seldom make history." Again, the idea of disobedience as a driver for historical change is clear. So for a second, this kind of threw me through a loop because I was reading this and I learned all about this and more during my 5th grade field trip. Like if they stopped it there, you do not want to include that in an essay because that's just kind of I don't really know how to explain it, but they tied it in with the T-shirt that they got saying, "Well-behaved women seldom make history." But I would even maybe take out the 5th grade field trip because, I don't know, I feel like that kind of, it was so long ago that makes it less relevant and a little bit more childish. I don't know if that's just my opinion. We'll see what score they got, but it's just something to keep in mind. One historical change, and then also, usually, sorry, I forgot to say this, but usually you avoid using first person, so saying I, you, we, stuff like that. Frozen again, I don't know why it keeps doing that. I'm gonna wait for a sec, because I don't know if you can, okay, there we go. When I was saying like I, me, we, you, whatever, you want to avoid saying that unless you're using a relevant personal example, which I think this would probably fit into that category, so that's okay. But just in general, you want to avoid that. One historical change have been made by acts of disobedience. Progressive thought is also enhanced. Right now, Bernie Sanders is hanging on for dear life in the 2016 presidential election. Although called a socialist by many, his radical philosophies had continued to garner the support of countless youth and adults alike. At this point, though, it is not likely he will win against Hillary the Democratic primaries. Despite the setback, Bernie's political thought has asked new questions about the future holds for American politics. His views are decidedly anti-establishment, which harkens back the nonconformist ideas of the transcendent Bernie himself, was even a supporter of Martin Luther King Jr., as evidenced by a photograph of him at one of his rallies. So just a quick side note here, this is getting dangerously close to, like, I don't know, really taking a political side and, or like, I feel like you don't want to get too political in AP Lang essays, but just keep that in mind, as I'll explain that more later. Even if Bernie does not win the Democratic nominations, the strength of his progressive ideas that were influenced by disobedience have a great chance of shaping the future of American society. So just in general, you kind of want to avoid being super controversial and stuff like that during AP essays, but we'll just keep going. Oscar Wilde's ideas that disobedience is what drives progress is a clear and accurate one. Disobedience has led people to questioning society, causing historical changes, and thinking progressive ideas. After all, we are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams. Okay, so go ahead and mentally note, write down, think about what the score might be. So I'll go look for it. Give me a minute. 3B. Okay, they got a 6, so that's passing. That's pretty good. I'll read the notes up. This essay adequately argues the position on the extent to which Wilde's claims are valid. Observing that disobedience promotes the questioning of societal norms, historical change, and progressive thought, the essay presents 3 adequately developed pieces of evidence surrounding the Henry David Thoreau, the civil rights movement of 2016 presidential election that are sufficiently connected to the claim in the second paragraph of the essay. Let's see. The student then moves to the current election cycle and the essay's treatment of Bernie Sanders with adequate comment regarding the impact of his disobedience. While the prose contains some lapses, it is generally clear for its approach, evidence adequately developed an argument, and clear prose essay was scored a 6. So it turned out pretty well for them, but just for the most part, I would recommend, I don't know, not going on like a political tangent. But I think they did a good job. Like, I'm not criticizing them or anything, but it just kind of makes me nervous when people do that because I don't know. Okay, anyway. Did we already read this one? We'll read this one, and then we'll go on to some student essays from last year. Oscar Wilde once observed, disobedience in the eyes of anyone who has read history is the world's original virtue. It is through disobedience that progress has been made, through disobedience and through rebellion. History has shown that different forms of rebellions resulted in the basic human rights we have today. It's also seen in modern day where people are currently making history and breaking the norms of society. Without disobedience, society would never make progress as a whole. So there's a clear position right there. The satirical Animal Farm by George Orwell exemplifies the use of rebellion to overthrow corrupt communist leaders. So just a little side note here again. This is really good. They're bringing in strong, like a classic literary example. And I'm going to do a whole lesson on this later of how you can build up your personal literary example library. But this is really good to put in an argument essay. Anyway, in the novel, the characters first accept their reality under these leaders. They slowly realize that this unfair treatment they are put under and rebelled against the leaders, eventually overthrowing them. This novel is also an analogy to the Soviet Union and communism under Joseph Stalin. The experiences of the characters in the novel and the people from the Soviet Union causes them to disobey against their leaders. They were able to have their own concerns and rejecting the lies their leaders were feeding them. One of the important causes of the rebellion is the ability to think clearly about a situation without disobedience. Being a human with critical thinking process would be of no use. Instead, they use disobedience for a change to happen so they don't sit around and wait until they get what they want, which would be a waste of their abilities. Rebellion comes in different forms, and it does promote social progress. We wouldn't be the people who we were today without the disobedience from our ancestors. The knowledge we obtained resulted in the change after the struggling experiences of many people in the past. Sorry guys, I have a cold, so I just keep getting mucus in my throat. That's why I keep pausing. But go ahead and think about what score you'd give that for a sec while I grab a drink. Okay. I think I'm ready to go. Okay, 3C. Let's scroll down there. So they got a 4, which is not quite passing. So let's find out why. This essay inadequately argues a position to the extent which Wilde's claims are valid. While the single piece of evidence presented, Animal Farm, has the potential to provide adequate support. So, like as I said, this is good that they brought it in, and it has potential to provide adequate support. But it was the only piece of evidence they brought in, and we'll go on to find that the essay's explanation of how the evidence helped to develop the position remains insufficient. The connection between animals overthrowing their leaders and the idea of progress is vague. Likewise, the attempted analogy between Animal Farm and Soviet Union does little to further the argument in third paragraph's essay. Attempt is more philosophical, I think, approach. One of the important causes of rebellion is the ability to think clearly is unconvincing and inappropriate. The prose generally conveys these students' ideas, but is inconsistent in controlling the the elements of effective writing. So just a few things to point out. In argument essays, you always want to have at least 3 pieces of evidence. I'd recommend using a literary example, a historical example, and then either like a modern day or a personal example. But this student only used 1. And it was insufficient. And another thing is, they kind of like danced around the idea. They danced around like how it connects. In AP Lang essays, you don't want to assume the author knows what you're talking about. You want to explain everything in full detail. You don't want to ever just let them guess, because then they'll write here, well, they will put it's inadequately, insufficient, stuff like that. So that was that. So now I'm going to go over one that I wrote. Let's put a pause. Okay. I'm going to go over a few argument essays that I wrote last year, just to give you an example of student essays and ones that I can actually read the handwriting of because they are typed. And then, so we'll start with this one. Actually, let's start with this one. I just lied. Okay. So this argument was asking you to argue for or against this prop. Many men go fishing all their lives without knowing that is not fish thereafter. So you're like supposed to argue for whether that claim was valid or not valid. So I'll go ahead and read you mine. It's a little bit long, but this one I scored an 8 on. So it was one of the higher scoring essays, not to like brag or anything, because most of mine turned out to be 6s. But many men go fishing all their lives without knowing that it is not fish thereafter. This quote is very prevalent in the world today. In contemporary society, many people spend most of their lives trying to create a secure life for themselves. They think they want control, and so they spend their lives chasing after perfection by trying to get a job with good benefits, a safe healthcare plan, the perfect body, and an overall seemingly aesthetic life. What they are really looking for is inner peace, which often doesn't come from what they are so desperately reaching or fishing for. The mentality that a lot of people have in society is, if I can just get/do/be, I was supposed to say be, not be, be/achieve this one thing, then I'll be happy. They might say, once I lose 10 pounds, I'll be at peace with myself, or once I get promoted, I'll be happy, or once I pay off my house, I'll be content. They're fishing for all these things, but the thing is, once they catch the fish, by losing the weight, getting the job, or making the money, they often find that it isn't enough. Their demand for fish increases, and they are left farther away from what most people really want, which is peace and happiness. This may be why so many people enter the rat race, because they just want to find a secure way to catch fish. This is also a prevalent mentality that is seen in the development with eating disorders, which I have struggled with myself. I wanted so desperately to feel accepted, and I wanted control. At least that's what I told myself I wanted. In all reality, I just wanted to be happy, so I started to lose weight, and it became addicting. I just lost where I was. Oh, perfect, more, better, best. These words bounced around in my head and screamed at me every day. I couldn't breathe. It was too much. Perfect, more, better, best. My brain chanted this over and over again. Be perfect, do more, be better, be the best. And I needed some way to cope. Breakfast was the first activity of the day. Where was I? So naturally, I perfected that first. It was perfectly healthy, natural, nutritious, and it had the perfect number of calories. It calmed me down for a little bit. I had caught my fish. At least I thought. At least I felt as though my breakfast was perfect. I finally felt in control again, but before long, breakfast turned into lunch, which then turned into dinner, and I stared at my plate, seeing only numbers and percentages instead of food. 500 calories too much, 300 no, 100 perfect. I didn't stop when I was shivering in 90-degree weather, not when I got concerned comments and stares. I didn't stop when it hurt to sit down for more than 2 minutes, and I didn't stop when the depression kicked in. I didn't stop because I wouldn't. I didn't want to fall out of control again. I spent years of my life fishing for the perfection. What I really wanted was to be at peace with myself, and with the rise of suicide rates, depression, and anxiety, it is proven that so many other people are doing the same thing. So that was my first paragraph, and that was for my evidence. As I said, you usually want to use a literary, historical, and personal/modern example that is relevant, and so I used personal, which is why I was able to use first person in that one. Thousands of years ago in India, a prince lived a seemingly amazing life. He was given anything he wanted. He was entertained, well-fed, and had servants there to tend his every beck and call. But he found himself unhappy. So he fled the palace and became a poor beggar, but he found that he was still not happy. And that is when it happened. According to him, he became enlightened. He became the Buddha. He founded a whole religion based on the idea that you should give up what you think you're looking for and do things like meditate and become one with yourself. And it worked. He converted millions of people, and many people became monks and gave up everything they had to spend their entire lives fishing that they had spent their entire lives fishing for, and many of them found themselves to be happier. Buddha preached that the root of suffering is attachment, and that includes attachment to things you were chasing after, or the fish. Many people practice Buddhism today, showing that many people are truly searching for things they don't really want until they find something that truly speaks to their soul. In the widely read book, and so that was the historical example, in case you pick up on that one. In the widely read book Animal Farm by George Orwell, you can also see this theme present. The animals in the books almost blindly follow the pigs because they don't know what they really want. They work themselves to death in some cases because they think that what they're doing will bring them freedom, that it really sends them to their graves. In the book that moves forward is beasts of England, beasts of Ireland, beasts of every land and clime, hearken to my joyful tidings of the golden future time. But that golden future time never came because they were fishing when what they really wanted was definitely not fish. This book was actually written with a society in mind. Orwell based it off certain governments and trends he had seen, proving that many other people also see this trend in society. So that was my literary example. A lot of people are able to come to the conclusion after they have been through a big trial. For example, my own family had to declare bankruptcy 7 years ago, and after doing that, we were finally able to realize that we should be focusing more on family than money. It is unfortunate but apparent that many people don't know what they truly want until they have what they think they want ripped away from them. So that's just an example of an argument essay that was a higher scoring one that I wrote last year. But this was also towards the end of the year, so you guys will get there probably better than that, I'm sure. Let me go to one of my rhetorical. So we have a little bit of time left. You can either do another. I can show you an example of an argument or rhetorical. If you guys have a preference, you can comment it. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and just do another argument and then see if we have time for rhetorical. So this one was about books, and you can see right here, Emerson asserts the idea that books are important, but you have to take them with a grain of salt. Books are the best things well used, abused among the worst, and you want to take a position on that, whether books are bad, books are good, or books are both. So I'll go ahead and read you my essay, and I think this got a 6, so it's not like super high, but it's a realistic standard of what you should be aiming for. Oh, rhetorical. Okay, I'll go ahead and do the rhetorical then. Let me go back. Sorry, just saw your comment. Let's do this one. Okay. So I'll go ahead and read the prompt, and then I'll give you. I think this essay also scored a 6. So again, not super high, but it's something reasonable that you can kind of gauge yourself off of and aim for a little bit higher than this. But I'll go ahead and start with the prompt. The passage below is from the Indispensable Opposition, an article by Walter Lippmann. It appeared in the Atlantic Monthly in 1939. Read the passage carefully, then write an essay in which you analyze the rhetorical strategies Lippmann uses to develop his argument. Were they pressed hard enough, most men would probably confess that political freedom, that is to say, the right to speak freely and to act in opposition, is a noble ideal rather than a practical necessity. As the case for freedom is generally put today, the argument lends itself to this feeling. It is made to appear that, whereas each man claims his freedom as a matter of right, the freedom he accords to the other men is a matter of toleration. Thus, the defense of freedom of opinion tends to rest not on its substantial, beneficial, and indispensable consequences, but on somewhat eccentric or rather vaguely benevolent attachment to an abstraction. It is all very well to say, Voltaire, I wholly disapprove of what you say, will defend your death to right to say it. But as a matter of fact, most men will not defend the death or the rights of other men if they disapprove sufficiently of what the other men say. They will somehow suppress those men if they can. So if this is the best that can be said for the liberty of opinion, then a man must tolerate his opponents because everyone has a right to say what he pleases. Then we shall find that liberty of opinion is a luxury, safe only in pleasant times where men can be tolerant because they are not yet deeply vitally concerned. So I'm not going to go read through this whole thing because it's not really necessary for you to really understand the essay, but that's just a little brief intro. Okay, so this is what I wrote, and this scored a 6, so just keep that in mind. In 1939, during World War II, struggling today. Patriotism was all the rage. America was the land of the free, the home of the brave, and a place of political freedom. However, in this article, Whitman argues that political freedom is a noble ideal rather than a practical necessity. In a fiery and slightly sarcastic tone, he breaks down his argument that political freedom is a vaguely benevolent attachment to abstraction. This was his criticism of what he believed that free speech had become. But he also presents the argument that opposing opinions are equally important as someone's personal opinions, and it is important to hear them. One rhetorical strategy that Whitman uses to help his argument is citing a popular, well-known quote to create an illusion, which is a rhetorical strategy, and then immediately refuting it. He says, "It is all very well to say Voltaire," which is part of the illusion because if you don't know who Voltaire is, it's assuming that you know who Voltaire is. "I wholly disapprove of what you say, but will defend to death your right to say it," which is a very famous quote from him. But as a matter of fact, most men will not defend to death the rights of other men. This strategy is particularly effective because it brings up a popular opposition and is able to demonstrate how it is not actually prevalent in society. Although it would be ideal. He acknowledges that the kind of mentality is great, but it is not always the reality. Another rhetorical strategy that Whitman uses to help his argument are hypothetical situations. He's able to relate it back to the reader by talking about things like annoying neighbors and crying babies, which we didn't get to that part, but I promise it happened. He makes a powerful point that although most people want to hold the ideas of free speech, most of them give them up over common annoyances. This all ties back to his thesis that free speech should be valued even if other people's views annoy them or they don't agree with them. Those are as important as someone's own opinions. Another rhetorical strategy that Whitman uses in his argument is an ethos appeal. He uses people's patriotism and need to do the right thing to sway them by saying, "We must protect the right of our opponents to speak because we must hear what they have to say." Just as putting the word right in there, it puts a very patriotic spin on it and shows the importance of freedom of speech and hearing others' opinions. They claim that freedom of speech should be an important thing that allows us to hear others' opinions, but is rather treated as a benevolent ideal rather than a necessity, is clearly stated and built up over and over again in this article. He related it to the present, 1939, but it also relates to today. As he stated, most people often simply tolerant of others' freedom of speech. For example, when people have different political opinions, they often tolerate each other, but don't really listen to the other's opinion. They immediately shut down others' opinions and use confirmation bias to bolster their own. This is a prime example of how even today, instead of treating freedom of speech as an important tool to hear the other opinion, we simply tolerate it. Okay, so that scored a 6. Probably because it didn't really explain everything completely, but it was adequate as most 6s are. So I'll go over, finish reading this one on books, and then we'll close. So this one I already kind of started explaining, but it's talking about books are bad and books are good, and you have to say like somewhere in the middle, books are bad, books are good. And I froze them again, so we love that for me. Don't know if you can hear me, so I'm just gonna wait a hot sec. Hello? Are you there? I hate this actually. Whew, okay. Okay, hello? I don't know if I'm frozen on your screen, but I'm definitely frozen on my screen. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, comment, because then I'll keep going. But if you can't, I don't want to keep going. My screen is definitely frozen. So, sorry guys, I apologize. Alexa was towards the end of the stream though. Yeah, I can't click anything. So I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. I'm just gonna go ahead and keep reading in case you guys can, I guess. Oh, Crowdcast. What? Okay, this is really frustrating. I'm not really sure what to do. Okay. So I guess if you can't hear me, you probably would have left by now. But if you can hear me and you're still here, I'm going to go ahead and start reading this. Ralph Waldo Emerson asserts the idea that books are important, but you have to take things with a grain of salt. He states in a speech that books are the best things well used, abused among the worst. He explained that using books can help people to understand why we are truly seeking in life. He makes a very He makes a very sound argument. What was I? And when he stated what is really true, books can be amazing, but they can also wreak havoc when used or interpreted the wrong way. Books have undoubtedly have the power to change the world, whether this can be for good or bad. Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, inspired people to consider mass genocide not only as acceptable, or considered mass genocide not only as acceptable, but justified. However, books like To Kill a Mockingbird brought to light important world problems so they can be talked about and eventually resolved. So when anyone in humanity has something that powerful, we need to make sure that it is used properly. So I'm definitely, oh wait, yeah, still frozen, but I can't go down. Okay. Like Emerson originally stated, the series of books is noble. The idea that someone can pour their ideas and soul into an inanimate object that allows people all over the world to see them is truly profound. Someone can write a book that causes someone living thousands of miles away to laugh, cry, or get angry. Reading the book Animal Farm gave a whole new outlook on politics, and after the person who wrote it was long gone, so the idea of theory behind books is amazing, but people must proceed with caution. Still frozen. I don't know what to do. Okay. That's so fun for me. I can't even tell who's in here still because it's frozen at 53 minutes. Okay. Well, I guess the only thing I can really do is wait it out, and I'm just going to keep reading, I guess. Okay. So many people are easily influenced by confirmation bias, so consequently, if and when they choose to read, they will surround themselves with books that line up with what they already think. For example, when the powerful Emperor Qin came to rule China, he burned all the books that opposed his idea of how government should run. People like him let the author of these books do their thinking for them, and they will never analyze the opposing viewpoint. However, this isn't always the case. If some people are able to escape the echo chamber, then books can help them to be able to weigh and consider ideas, philosophies, and opinions from all viewpoints. So that's where we're going to stop for today, if anybody is even still here, because I can't scroll down because my screen is frozen. So I can't tell if anybody's still here. I can't tell what time. I can't even end the broadcast. Yeah. So you guys can leave if you're still here, and I'm going to try to figure this out. But just remember to follow Fiveable on social media platforms, and have a great week of school, guys. Tomorrow's Monday. Get pumped. Yeah, okay. Not really sure what to do at this point. Technical difficulties. Okay. Hey, Dad. The screen is completely frozen, and I'm in the middle of my live stream. What do I do? So I can't end it, and I'm not sure if they can hear me. It got frozen right here.
Okay, Control Alt Delete.
Control Alt. Where's the delete button? Where? Yeah, click it. Okay. Ah. Yeah. That's fine. Okay, there we are. Let's see.
Yeah, see,
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay. And that's so awkward. People are still there. Okay, bye. Okay. I don't know if any of you could hear me through all of that, but my computer was just being weird and being frozen. But anyway, I just went over this essay. I don't know if you guys heard that or not. Can you guys comment if you guys heard any of that? Because I was talking during the whole thing. Because I thought maybe you guys couldn't see me, but just could hear me. I don't know. Anyway, so that's going to be the end of this stream. And just a reminder to follow Fiveable on their social media accounts, which are right here. Oh, my screen's still frozen for you guys, huh? That's super awkward. Okay. So my screen is still frozen for you guys. But follow social media at ThinkFiveable, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then have a good week of school, guys. Tomorrow's Monday. Yeah. Pretend to be positive. Maybe you'll feel it. All right. Anyway, I hope you guys got something from this, and I'll see you next time.